Hi there, stargazers. Here's what's going on in the sky this month.
The highlights of March are Sirius shining brightly, the second supermoon of 2020, the monthly planetary lineup with the moon, Mercury and Venus at their greatest elongations and shining bright, and Venus doing its monthly flyby of the moon. March is a good month for observing celestial objects for those living in the northern hemisphere, and that's because of the clear winter skies. Sirius is the closest and therefore brightest star in our sky, and you can find it by looking for Orion, a distinct constellation. Orion looks like a hunter preparing to shoot from a bow and arrow here, but for those observing without a telescope, you can just look for that distinct bow tie shape in the southern sky after sunset, and the belt made up of 3 stars. Sirius is the bright object to the bottom left of Orion. Those in the southern hemisphere will see the same thing, but upside down. So Sirius will be to the top right of Orion. On the 9th of March, we will see the second supermoon of 2020, the full worm moon. The March full moon is called the worm moon because this is the time of year that the ground becomes soft and the earthworms appear. It's a supermoon because, as with last month's, it's at its closest approach in its orbit around the Earth, so it will appear bigger and brighter.
The 18th of March sees a spectacular planetary lineup before dawn, so fingers crossed for clear skies that morning.
Look low in the southeastern sky before dawn. Those of you in Australasia and Asia will see Jupiter and Mars approaching the moon with Saturn not far behind. As the solar terminator moves across to the Middle East, Africa, and Western Europe, people there will see Jupiter and Mars about to touch the crescent moon before sunrise. Notice how the further you are from the equator, the closer to the horizon the moon and planets are? If you live closer to the equator, you'll mostly have to crane your neck and look higher up to see the moon and planets crossing the sky. I'll talk a bit about that later on. Those living in the Americas will have the best view of Mars and Jupiter closest to the moon. I might be imagining it, but the Americas seem to get the best of these views recently. If we're lucky with air quality, those of you with telescopes will also see the moons of Jupiter in this lineup. And if you have a good camera, this is a brilliant photo opportunity because you may have to wait months for the next one. The 20th of March is the Equinox. This is when the sun shines directly onto the equator and the northern and southern hemispheres have equal amounts of day and night. Spring begins in the northern hemisphere and autumn or fall in the southern hemisphere. There is an equinox in March and September and a solstice in June and December, and these mark the changes of season throughout the year as we travel around the sun. The Earth's axis of rotation is slightly tilted at around 23.5 degrees, and this means there are only 2 points in the Earth's orbit at which the northern and southern hemispheres have equal amounts of day and night. These points are the March and September equinox. The March equinox marks the beginning of spring in the northern hemisphere and the beginning of autumn or fall in the southern hemisphere. 3 months after the March equinox, we see that the Earth's tilt results in maximum daylight hours in the northern hemisphere, and as such, the southern hemisphere has its shortest day. This is called the June solstice. It marks the summer in the north and the winter in the south. The September equinox brings back equal day and night in the 2 hemispheres and marks the turning of seasons opposite to those of the March equinox. And finally, the December solstice is the opposite of the June solstice, with the northern hemisphere well into winter and the southern hemisphere enjoying the summer. The 24th of March is a great day to say good morning to Mercury and good night to Venus. Let's start in the morning when Mercury will reach its greatest western elongation. This means that we'll have longer to observe Mercury in the sky before the sun rises. The further south you are, the longer Mercury will be visible in the eastern sky before the sun rises. In Cape Town, it will be visible for 90 minutes before sunrise, but in Tokyo, only for 15 minutes from 4:55 in the morning, very low in the eastern sky. On the evening of that day, Venus will reach its greatest eastern elongation, and this means it will be visible for longer after sunset in the western sky. The further north you are, the longer Venus will be visible. So in London, it will be visible for 3 hours after sunset before Venus itself sets. And in Wellington, only for 90 minutes after sunset. And finally, on the 28th of March, Venus will make its monthly pass by the waxing crescent moon. In the northern hemisphere, Venus will be alongside the moon, and in the southern hemisphere, it will be below it. I hope you enjoyed this month's sky forecast, and if you did, please subscribe and hit the bell for notifications. I'll see you next month for the April sky forecast, and in the meantime, I'll leave you with the summary. Bye-bye, stargazers.